You're not seeing.
Yeah, we're live.
Okay, great. Then it's time to start the Danish Innovation Index 2024 Annual Award Conference. Established in 2021, the Danish Innovation Index is an independent project managed by researchers at Aarhus University, Department of Management. It includes a ranking of currently 80 companies operating on the Danish consumer market, representing 20 different industries. Currently, our dataset holds more than 1 million data points. We have 15 partners across the world managing the innovation indexes for their respective countries. 4 different continents are represented among the partners. And on that note, we are ready to present the Danish Innovation Index to you. So first, I would like to give a warm welcome to all of our participants, those that have joined and whom we can see here on Zoom, but also all of you following via our live stream on the webpage. We cannot see you here on our Zoom screen, but we are very happy to have you here with us today. Also, a warm welcome to our keynotes. Tim, who got up early this morning to join us all the way from New York, and to Jakob, who represents a different organization than what we usually see in this event, namely Zetland, a media company. And we are curious to hear more about innovation from both of these people. And of course, also a warm welcome to all of our panelists who we will get to hear more from later on. They will represent the most innovative companies within their respective sectors. So we really look forward to that. I will just give you a short overview of the program. We will start with our 2 interesting keynotes, one from academia and one from the industry. We then move on to the awards, where we present the top 10 most innovative companies, as well as the winners from the respective industries. This is followed by a panel discussion on how these top performing companies approach innovation. And after that, we call it a day, and we will all be full of new impressions and inspiration to go out in the world and be innovative. For those of you who do not know the Danish Innovation Index, or the DII, as we call it, I will give you a very short introduction to how it works. DII is the first ranking of innovativeness of companies operating on the Danish market, as it is perceived by consumers, so not by company managers or other experts. And I think Tim will tell you much more about why this is an important perspective to have on innovation. So DII is, first of all, consumer-based. It's a quarterly survey where we ask consumers to select companies with which they have experience. And then we ask them to rate how innovative they find the company based on their experience. DII is locally representative, so we focus on the Danish market, and we include companies from 20 different industries, corresponding to approximately 70% of the Danish household spending. So from here, we select the companies with the biggest market shares, plus some wildcards. And the consumer sample is representative of the Danish population. So we aim both for representativeness in terms of our consumer sample, but also in terms of the ranked companies included. And finally, DII is multidimensional. So we acknowledge that companies and organizations, they can be innovative on different parameters related to, for example, commercial innovation, social innovation, digital innovation, and so on. So Just touching upon why DII is relevant, we have several audiences that you can say. So for us as researchers, it's very relevant because it provides us with a unique data set for scientific research purposes. Also for our partners, because we collaborate a lot with our colleagues from the other universities, and several elements of our data collections are directly comparable. And that, of course, provides us with an opportunity to make some comparisons or compare countries on innovativeness. It's relevant for companies because they get an opportunity to understand how they are viewed by consumers in comparison to other companies. And of course, they can also use this ranking in their PR and to get a hold of customers. It's relevant for the customers because they will, in the end, be the ones that benefit from companies being more focused on innovation. And this company ranking may even guide them in their preferences. And finally, policymakers can use this information also to get a deeper understanding of the level of innovativeness and how it can be supported within the different industries. Yeah. So a big thanks to our partners, both from the Nordic countries, from Europe, and from the US for a very good collaboration. And of course, a huge thanks to Fonden and Aarhus University, who has actually funded this long-term project. Yes. And now it's time for the first keynote. I will give a warm welcome to our academic keynote here, Timothy Keiningham, who is professor in marketing at St. John's University in New York. He has produced many highly ranked scientific articles and best-selling books on the topic of customer experience, loyalty, and satisfaction. Most importantly, he will be the one to convince you why consumer perception of innovativeness is very important for companies. You have the option of writing questions in the chat via the live stream. And then Darius will do his best to manage these questions. So welcome, Tim. The floor, the screen is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. How do we?
Let me. I should be able to.
Perfect.
So you should be able to share now, Tim.
Instead of sharing the way mine works, if you could right-click on my screen and pin me to your screen. So everyone, just put your mouse over there, pin me in. Can you see me okay? Perfect. First of all, I want to thank everyone at the Danish Innovation Index for asking me to do this. I accepted immediately. In fact, they asked me many months ago, and I think they thought I would forget to do it, but I did not. And I'm super happy to be here. And although I'm described as an academic, because my primary job now is as a professor at St. John's University in New York City, the reality is most of my career was as a business executive. I spent 17 years at Ipsos, which is the third largest research firm in the world. I was the global chief strategy officer for the last 3 years. And even after leaving that, my connection to the Innovation Index came actually not through my academic side, but through the role I was working with a research firm called Rockbridge Associates. And so I'd been involved heavily in this from the very beginning. And I always think of things from how does this matter for how I'm going to run my company, right? That's really the most important thing. Now, I want to be clear, you're seeing me, but I owe a great debt to a number of people with regard to what we're going to talk about today. And I'm not going to go through all their names, but you can see there's a number of people in addition to me who are really responsible for bringing these ideas to light. Why innovation matters? We all know innovation matters. Why? Well, it's the main driver of productivity. If you actually want to increase the wealth of your country, meaning people get paid more for doing, the same level in terms of input, but the output is greater, you only can do that through innovation. And that's not me saying that. This is something I took directly from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. They look at this as the precursor to economic growth. The problem is how we look at it. We tend to look at it through patents granted or patent citations or royalty payments from patents. You can see patents play a big role in the way we traditionally measure it. And then they look and say, well, let's look at another softer measure. Let's look at how much money is spent into research and development. Okay, clearly there was a time where that really was a great thing, but we'll talk a little bit in a minute about why that may not be the best way forward. Now, if you look, you can see, like if you looked at the Bloomberg Innovation Index, where they measure the innovativeness of countries, they follow that same path. They look and they say, well, what's the manufacturing value add? What's the R&D spending? And what's the patent activity? The problem with that is really summarized well from the World Economic Forum. Now they said, yeah, it was great, but we've moved from products to services. In fact, the way you can tell if a country is rich or poor right now is the percentage of services that dominate the economy. I'm sure in Denmark, services are the primary driver of the economy. They're definitely the primary driver of the United States. In fact, they're the drivers of all EU countries. And even in manufacturing-based countries, where we think of manufacturing-based countries like China, they're pushing heavily to become a more service-dominated economy. Why? Because it's the only way to be a wealthy economy. Now, there's another type of, another way that we try to measure innovativeness in addition to R&D, and that is we ask managers and experts, hey, who's the most innovative company? And that's not technically wrong, but it tends to give you cool inventions, right? Technology that is driving something. And in Europe, you use the Community Innovation Survey widely as a measure of innovation. And I'm not knocking it, but basically you go in and you survey managers, and the managers tell you, hey, here's how innovative we are. And then you actually ask the managers, and how good was that for your business? There's a positivity bias that's automatically going to happen, right? If you ask somebody, well, how innovative you are, we're really innovative. And then you say, well, did that help your business? How many people are going to say, no? It just doesn't work like that. So you end up with this association of innovativeness that doesn't actually link well to market performance. And it's obvious why that would be the case. I don't want to suggest that there's nothing there, but I want to suggest that the problem with that is you get a biased view. It's like me asking you, how beautiful is your child? It's obviously very beautiful, right? Is it the most beautiful child in the world? Yes, it is. Why? Because it's your baby, and your baby is always the most beautiful, and it is always the smartest. And the reality is, yes, they are all beautiful, but in terms of making an impact on your business, they are, you aren't the best judge of what innovation is. Who is? The customer is. The customer is the king. The customer decides whether this innovation actually matters or not. So the problem we have is that traditional metrics focus on invention, not innovation. Now, that doesn't mean invention is not important. Of course it is. It provides the raw material for innovation. But for an innovation to for an invention to actually be an innovation, it has to be useful. That is the difference between invention and innovation. Is it useful or not? And the primary judges of what are useful are customers, not managers or experts, or how much you spent on patents and R&D activity. And so that led to new calls for better ways to measure innovativeness, or at least ways to complement the others. And you see that, as you already saw, there are a lot of partners out there now that are doing national measures of innovation. Clearly, the Danish Innovation Index is a very important one of those. The part I'm more going to talk about today is the American Innovation Index. But just so you know, the Nordic countries are the ones that actually started this, right? They actually started in Norway, and in Sweden, and Denmark, and Finland, and they've been actually driving this. This is not an America-driven thing. It's a Scandinavia-driven thing. They were the ones who said, I recognize that this is where we need to go. It turns out, however, that they were more right than they could have possibly guessed. Now, the overriding argument for why we want to do these customer perceived measures of innovation is that it's going to make your firm more attractive. And if your firm is more attractive, then you're going to get better market performance. Sounds great. Sounds believable. The problem is no one's been able to prove it. And so the research I'm going to talk to you right now addresses that critical need. Now, so what we're going to look at is how the American Innovation Index links to abnormal returns. And abnormal returns we'll talk about, basically, those are the stock returns you get that are above or that are different from the expected return that you should be receiving. So can you make more than what you would otherwise be expected to make if you're more innovative or not? Now, we also looked and said, how does customer satisfaction play into that? And we have an American Customer Satisfaction Index that has been used in scientific research for decades now. And then we wanted to make sure that we weren't just getting some sort of big companies do better. So we controlled for it by looking at the market capitalization, meaning the total value of the firm based on its stock performance, and what accountants call market to book, meaning here's how much we as accountants think it should be worth. We put all of those in to make sure that we were giving an accurate assessment. And what we looked at was we looked at 5 years of data from the American Customer Satisfaction Index, from the American Innovation Index and the American Customer Satisfaction Index, and we looked at 123 publicly traded firms. And so we linked all of these together to see what's going to happen. So the first thing we did was just some exploratory analysis. And by exploratory analysis, I just mean it's not the heavy-duty scientific lifting. It's just, do we even see any relationships in a basic way? So the first thing we want to make sure of is we say, well, we'd expect to see a relationship between innovation and satisfaction. Do we actually see that? And so, I mean, I don't want to bore you with numbers, and this is designed more for an academic audience where you see a table of numbers. All you need to know is that there is a very strong correlation, highly significant correlation between satisfaction and innovation perceptions, okay? And, you know, that's good news, but it's not the only thing, right? It's not a perfect correlation, but it does say there's a very strong relationship. More innovative companies should produce happier customers. Now, we want to say, well, what does the American Innovation Index data look like? Because we know what satisfaction data looks like, and I'll show you in just a second. You know, are people all bunched up to the top or at the bottom? It turns out it's almost normally distributed. Now, you probably go, well, why does that matter? What it means is there are people everywhere in terms of how there are companies everywhere in terms of how customers perceive innovation. You know, you can be at the high end or the low end, you know, but most of them are going to fall in kind of this middle part of the curve. Now, the thing we wanted to really care about, though, is does knowing that a level of innovation help me predict abnormal returns in the future? So what I mean is, let's look at how our abnormal returns are right now. And let's go look back a year prior at how people perceived our innovativeness. Are they related to each other? It turns out that if you just do a very straightforward analysis, you find very highly significant correlations between your prior period's innovation perception and your current year's abnormal stock returns. That was really a shock to us, because abnormal stock returns normally don't go based on things that you can track over time. They're usually caused by some new change in the market, like you're going to get acquired, or some bad news happened about your firm, or you're going to release a new product that you've talked about. Those things tend to drive an abnormal return. They're called abnormal because they don't happen consistently. Yet here we can see that consistently you get higher than expected returns just based on how customers perceive your innovation level. Now, how does that work for satisfaction? Well, satisfaction is not normally distributed. You can see there's a big tail here on one side, and then it kind of bunches up to the top. And the reason for that is people don't buy from brands that they hate. People don't buy from brands that they hate, because if you buy from a brand that you hate, that you're not forced to buy from, yes, you have to go to the government for something, right? Sometimes you're going to hate that because you have no choice. But for most firms, I go to a place that is going to satisfy me. Why? Because if you're going to places that treat you badly, that says something about you, right? You have choice. Why would you choose the bad one? So you end up with this bunched up piece. It doesn't look like the innovation side. What that says to you is they may be able to satisfy you, but they may not be able to make you think they're innovative. That's a big difference. Now, does satisfaction lead to abnormal returns? Not as directly. As you can see, if you're just looking from one period to the next, you don't see a relationship. Ultimately, you see a significant relationship 2 years in the future, just looking at satisfaction on abnormal returns. Now, we wanted to make sure that abnormal returns aren't self-fulfilling prophecy where they predict themselves. So we looked at this. How do we do this? Well, we looked at the NASDAQ Composite Index, and we related the stock's return to what would be expected based on the NASDAQ return. I know that's really technical. All you need to know is we looked at the stock market. We said, how's the stock market performing? And we compared how your stock is performing relative to the stock market. And we said, what's the difference between what we expect based on performance of the market and the performance of your firm? And here, abnormal returns, they are normally, not quite, but they have almost a normal distribution, similar to what you saw in the American Innovation Index, which is great because what it tells you is that they're all over the place too, right? It's not an obvious, here we go. And the thing that was really important, we wanted to see if abnormal returns in one period predicted abnormal returns in the future. And the answer is absolutely not. There's no relationship between your abnormal returns in one year and your abnormal returns in the next year. So everything you're seeing in terms of what is being predicted based on innovation on abnormal returns is actually being caused by the perceptions of innovation on abnormal returns. It's not just a function of how the market is performing. Now, this is important for all of you. You want to say, I don't care. I don't want to do all the math. The thing you need to know is there's a cliff. If you do not have customers perceive you doing well, you go off a cliff. And it was funny because the cliff actually hit exactly at 30%. If you're in the bottom 30%, your abnormal returns are off by 10.2%. That's a huge amount of money that you're not making just by being in the bottom. just by being in the bottom. Now, you're probably going, okay, how does this really help me? So now we do our more sophisticated model, right? We did one that's designed to handle what we call panel data, meaning data that is tracked over time, right? And just like we do here. And so how do I make sure that's not just some sort of trend in the data? And so we had to use some sophisticated modeling, and we'll talk about that at some point later offline, or you can read our scientific paper and it'll tell you exactly what you need to know. But again, an academic looking slide. And everybody's going, this means nothing to me. I have some numbers that don't mean anything. All I want you to know is that if you look at the American Innovation Index, which is the innovation index we're looking at here with 123 firms, you see a significant positive relationship. There's also a relationship between satisfaction. But the satisfaction relationship isn't one based on the absolute level. It's based on your change. In fact, if I only looked at the absolute level, we couldn't make it link to abnormal returns. Am I going up or am I going down? And they work together. These are independent of each other. Now you're going, this number doesn't mean anything to me. And you're absolutely right, because it doesn't mean anything to me either. What mattered to me was, well, how much money does this mean? And so what we looked at, we said, okay, how much is a 5-point increase in innovation worth? How much is a 5-point increase in customers' perception of your innovation worth? Well, for the firms in our sample, it equated to $2.8 billion in shareholder wealth. $2.8 billion. Now, I want you to put that in perspective for a second. Disney just announced a stock buyback to improve the value of its shares because its performance has been pretty poor because consumers are consistently not viewing it as innovative. They're not going to see their movies or to the parks anymore. They're going to spend $3 billion to buy that stock back so that they can raise the stock price to what so they can raise the stock price so that shareholders can get their return. And they aren't going to change their company at all to do that. It's just going to spend the $3 billion. You get that same result by having customers perceive Disney as more innovative just by 5 points. And while 5 points sounds like a lot, it's not. When I showed you that range in the very beginning, the normal curve of innovation perceptions, the low is 39, the high is 85, and the standard deviation is 7.2. I'm asking you to improve less than one standard deviation. You have to improve less than one standard deviation. That's pretty small to get a significant increase in the value of your company. So, in summary, what do? We looked at 5 years of data of satisfaction and customer perceptions of innovation, and we linked it to something we didn't actually expect to happen, abnormal stock returns. And we found they were significantly linked, both innovation and changes in satisfaction. Because clearly, if my innovation level is going up, my satisfaction level should be going up. So what are the implications? And I'm going to try to move very quickly. I think I'm probably a little over time. I apologize. What are the implications? Well, it corroborates what we think should happen, right? Being more innovative should make customers happier and make you more money. It turns out it's actually true. So what do we want to do? Well, for those scientific researchers on here, what do we need to do? We actually don't need to just know that the number goes up, and that's great. We need to know what drives that number up. So we need to be able to help companies with insights about, here's what you need to understand. Clearly, there are going to be cross-cultural differences, right? And we don't have that yet. So it's going to be great when we can work with our colleagues in Denmark and say, well, how does it change if we're in Denmark? I'm sure it doesn't change to the point where it doesn't make money, but how does it change? what the expectations are. How does innovation management impact these results? We talk a lot about managing, employees, managing service for customers, but we don't actually talk a lot about managing customer perceptions of firm innovativeness, right? And we also need to know, does this actually impact environmental and social outcomes? Here's something I'm sure is going to happen, because what we do know is there's a strong relationship between companies that customers perceive as socially innovative and their perceptions of their actual innovativeness. How do we make those things work together? For if you're a manager, clearly you're not tracking your innovativeness, or at least customers' perceptions of it, and you need to start. We need to know, do they think we're innovative or not? And then we need to understand what distinguishes us from the other firms in our industry. Because if we don't understand that, we aren't ever going to be perceived as innovative. Because if everybody's doing the same thing, then nobody is going to get a win. Now, we need some way to measure, are we core, which we call centrality, and are we distinctive? Which it means, am I different than everyone else? So think Tesla is in the car business, and you think of it that, but are they distinctive? How do these things play together? And no matter what, don't just trust the scientific paper, because the scientific papers are based on the whole market. Check your firm. How are we doing? What's the impact that I am seeing for my firm? And make sure that you're tracking that consistently. Now, for those in the investment community, you're not asking and you're not demanding innovation information based on how customers perceive it. We need to identify winners and losers. And then we need to hold management accountable for giving us that information and achieving high customer perceptions of firm innovativeness. The economic impact is staggering. I mean, the numbers are so large that we were actually scared to publish them. That's not a joke. Because you're now going, $3 billion, that's a huge amount of money for a relatively small change. But it's what we see. We kept going back consistently, trying to make sure we were right. And it wasn't just a bunch of marketers or whatever on this team. We made sure we had a top finance person on here, making sure our numbers were right. Now, for those of you who want to read it's a scientific paper, and so it reads like a scientific paper, although we did try to write it in as plain English as possible, but it's available for free. And I'm sure that if you put in the chat that you want to know how to get this, we'll get you this link, okay? And I apologize for going over my time for, I think, 3 minutes or so, but I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hope that you found this informative. If you can't tell I'm passionate about this, well, I haven't done a very good job. I'm extraordinarily passionate about this. And I hope that all of you begin thinking just a little differently about how we win as managers. Because you only win if you're innovative. As we like to say, getting customer satisfaction in, making sure customers are satisfied, that's the price to play in the game. But innovation is what you need to stay in the game. On that note, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Tim. This was super interesting, and I'm really impressed with your work on this topic. It's nice to see also some it's a very good proof of how all this work matters. Darius, I don't know if there's time for a question or whether we move on to Jakob.
Yes, I don't think we have time for questions.
Okay, but I also think this was super informative. So thank you so much, Tim. It was great. So now we will turn towards our industry speaker here. We are happy to welcome Jakob Moll as our next speaker. He's a co-founder and international director of Zetland, which most of us know as a media organization, which operates, I think, in a different way than the traditional media companies. And this may be why they are also ranked among the most innovative companies and the most innovative within their industry. But I think Jakob will tell us much more about that. So welcome, Jakob. The screen is yours.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me. And I feel it makes a lot of sense to be following Timothy, because one way to understand our work at Zetland, I think, is to really think about customer, or as we would say, member perception. And we're very happy that it seems like our members or the general audience considers us innovative. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit about why that might be. I'm not going to have that many numbers, not as many as Timothy, but a few. And then the way I've sort of structured this is to tell some very concrete stories about sort of what does innovation look like in this kind of weird industry of journalism. My own background is sort of as a generalist. I'm originally a trained journalist. I was the CEO of Zetland for a long while. I spent a year at Harvard recently looking at actually some of these same questions about, if not both innovation and leadership, and how to change culture within organizations to sort of make innovation happen. And so I sort of exist in the intersection between journalism, or editorial work, and business and technology. And I personally believe that it can actually be a great benefit to think sort of across fields and businesses and spheres, to try to find out where to go. I think we tend often within industries to look a lot at our competitors when we think about where to go, and I think we should often the interesting answers lie sort of beyond our immediate field. So, and for me, journalism, well, I have to say it's an excellent place to stand out. It's sort of a business in a sector in a pretty horrible state. It's also kind of stuck in the past. So as I usually say, my biggest feat was to get a bunch of investors to invest in a Danish journalism startup in 2015. That was actually crazy, that they believed in us back then. So I'm going to tell you 4 stories. The first one is in the past, and then we move up to the present. But just to a little bit of background, we came up as sort of a classical startup story. This is the actual basement, and my co-founder Leah, who's the editor-in-chief today. This is the day our site launched. Third try, we couldn't get it online. This is the moment where we actually got online in 2016. That was after sort of growing and getting investors and launching sort of a real operation. And this is the team a year and a half ago. I think we are about 20 people more now. So we are sort of becoming a mid-sized company. And so talking about innovation and compared to where we came from, I think that's a factor that I'll just touch on at the end, because that brings, of course, its own challenges, growing to more people than you can sort of comfortably shout at a party. Around the same table. So this is the short version. We were founded in 2012. We pivoted to become a daily bigger operation in 2016. We became profitable in 2019, and then we created a new business recently. That's I think is probably maybe one of the reasons we were invited here, because it's not something that usually happens in our sector. We have 40,000 paying members in Denmark, just about 1% of the adult population, making us one of the most successful sort of digital journalism startups in Europe in terms of having sort of paying subscribers in the field of general news. We're about 65 people, and one of our claims to fame is that 2/3 of our members are under the age of 45. A third is under, I think, 29 or something. And back when we started, one thing that the rest of the business could tell us was that young people would never pay for journalism. And obviously that was, and of course that wasn't true, because young people aren't crazy. They're just slightly different and smarter in some ways, especially concerning media. We publish a daily newspaper. One of the sort of foundational principles is that we do not publish a lot. We believe that we live in a time of information overload. So for us, on a very basic level, creating value for our customers is about being very thoughtful and respectful about their time and attention. The path for us has luckily only gone sort of in one direction. We also experienced the downturn in sort of in media in 2023. These numbers that we see, they end in 2020. They don't go straight up to now. So it's not like we've grown that much this past year, but still these numbers really stand out in obviously in the business of serious journalism. One of our early decisions was to not have ads at all, because we believed the value of not having ad out was bigger than the value, the money the ads would bring in. And I would say we have been extremely happy about that sort of decision, that analysis since. As Timothy would tell you, sort of all the big publishers that grew into adulthood in the US in the tens were all sort of heavily relied on both social media as a funnel and advertising as a business model. And they are some of them are dying, and all of them are struggling at the moment. And we believe that like the fundamental thing, one of the fundamental problems with journalism today is that ads sort of made us think about how to create value in people's lives in a lopsided manner, and so many mistakes were made in our field. Okay, so the 4 quick stories. The first one is so basic, it's almost silly to bring up, but at the same time, it's the most important one. And it's the question of what is the meaning of a product like journalism? And I think simply not asking that question is maybe the biggest fault of traditional media for the past 20 years since the internet came of age. Back in the past, not that distant past, getting information had broad value. Publishing news in itself was difficult, and people were willing to pay for it. And as we moved into a world of sort of information overabundance, journalism just sort of pretended that nothing had changed. We just had to publish more and faster. And basically that created an experience with the news that people across sort of advanced democracies totally hate. And it's creating some deep problems with news fatigue, and of course choosing not to buy the product, and created sort of the soil that out of which like misinformation and all these terrible things could grow. And especially the younger generations had a very hard time seeing and still do the value in sort of the traditional fast news model. So asking ourselves what the meaning of journalism was, what we did was what Timothy would tell us to do, which was to turn to the customers, to our audience. So in the very early days, we tried to build a very, very strong relationships with our customers, and think about how we could bring value to their lives. And for us, innovation was very much about looking, as I said, beyond journalism, and also very much being inspired by the tech world, where you develop thinking about hypotheses about how to create value. You test it, you listen very so much to all information coming back, and that was actually where all the solutions lied. We journalists just had to really start listening and thinking about where we fit in. One of the ways we did it was to sort of be one of the European pioneers in what we call live journalism. That's the picture on the right, where we, all the way back from 2012, did sort of live journalistic shows in major theaters in Denmark, and got very, very close to the audience, even sort of purely physically. So we were able to define this meaning, this value, the reason we existed, which was not about publishing news, but about helping our members make sense of the world and inspire them to engage with the world, which is something that is valuable in a very deep sense, because that is, we want to be connected to the world as human beings. And journalism can actually bring incredible value if you do it right. But we asked ourselves, like whatever way we could solve that problem in people's lives, their feeling of disconnection, we would pursue that idea. We were platform and format agnostic, which is another way to say that we thought of ourselves as a service, which is actually, journalists don't really think of journalism as service. And as I said, we don't call our customers or subscribers. We consider them members. That's the type of involvement we hope to get from them, and that we actually get. So that's basically it. Our big innovation in terms of the product happened around 2017-18. We all came from a text background, meaning that we had learned to write, the 4 founders of Zetland. But in the first year, we realized that we got so many people that would sort of leave our product, churn, and tell us that they loved what we did. They loved the product. They just couldn't find the time. And they would return as members when they could find the time. And of course, none of us ever get more time. That's not how the world works. So we had a problem. And what happened was that the members helped us see that there was a way to think about audio to integrate audio products in your everyday life that would actually make us much, much more relevant and useful. These were especially the younger members. And this is the graph I've shown the most times, including my years as a CEO, because we tested become sort of making audio versions of of stuff we made, and people liked it. And then in 2017, we went all in and started publishing everything in both text and audio. And this was way before anybody else was, except for maybe The Economist, had this thing within their product. Way before robots, luckily. So this was about teaching training all of our journalists to perform with their voice. And it turned out that within less than a year, we had gone from being a text-based organization to essentially an audio-based organization. The numbers are now 75-80% of our usage is audio. So we were able to actually redefine our what we did. And that's something I think we can still be pretty proud of. And it only happened because we were listening very, very hard to the needs of our audiences. The beautiful thing is if you're trying to build deep relationships with your audience, the voice is a very, very powerful instrument. So we also stumbled into a much, much deeper connection in this sort of membership way of thinking about our relationship to our customers or users. They started feeling like they knew us, and their investment in us grew to a whole new level, and radically different from sort of traditional news outlets in Denmark, because we, as we say, our secret sauce was always our tone of voice, which is not something journalists had really focused on in a systematic way. We tried to sound like people that you could trust and you would like to spend time with. Third story is about growth. Building on this relationship, we realized, we also had to innovate in how to find new customers. And we were also kind of struggling with our go-to-market model in a sense. Facebook wasn't. We were born in a Facebook era, and Facebook wasn't working anymore. And I sort of started pursuing this idea that if we were important in people's lives, then maybe they would help us grow. This example I have with is not this last year, but the previous year's campaign of what we call the ambassador campaign, or what became the ambassador campaign, which debuted in 2019, and which was transformative for our business. So in 2022, it culminated in a 3-week campaign where we wanted to get 3,000 new customers, which is kind of a lot in a country of Denmark's size, to get people to pay for journalism in 3 weeks. We got 5,000 as it was. Based on, I think we also had almost 5,000 voluntary ambassadors, meaning members that volunteered to help us connect with new members, to recommend us, as it was. And of course, that could be a whole story about how to design sort of member referral program based on values and not on, save 25% or win a poster. But let's just say that we have succeeded with building campaigns that are about like values and a mission. The little picture up here is one of the members, Christian, who actually sat out in a park and asked people if you could tell them about this wonderful news media that he consumed. The first year, the pitch to members was like, help us exist, like please help us not have to sell to a big corporation, or like keep us independent, which was of course a great narrative. And our board said, they're kind of old-fashioned. They said, okay, but you can't do it again. This is like the once-in-a-lifetime story about like save us from doom, right? And we've been able to do it every single year, every time with sort of a new way to frame, like, this is important what we try to do. We try to help democracy. We want to be a curious and intelligent public, being like able to make smart decisions, both as in our lives and in our society, and people want to support that. Now, maybe more than ever in many ways. Journalism is in a pretty serious place, with what's happening in the world. Part of the trick was centering the members. So it's currently it's very video based also, how we handle sort of the communication, the marketing in a very sort of tactical way. Some Danes will know that some of these people are famous. The top person is our editor-in-chief, Leah, but the most important people in the campaign were the members themselves, with Katrina being one of our most engaged members, like, for several years. So we can't do any sort of messaging or marketing that's more powerful than what Katrina can say about us. Again, sort of trust is about people today, not institutions. That's a whole other 20 minutes. So again, we've done it again and again, and it's maybe contributes like 40% of our yearly growth, 35 to 40%. So it's the core thing, and it helps us when all other things fail, like something like traffic from Facebook disappearing, as many publishers of news are struggling with. Again, centering the audience. So the final story is about what's next. We the most fun part of that is that we stumbled into something else, because being very oriented about sort of user needs and thinking about innovation in a very systemized way. We know that we're in a sector that does try to do new things all the time, sometimes mindlessly. TikTok operations, and I don't know what, but a lot of things are happening, and we could see that legacy publishers in Denmark was started to copy us, and this was something we were very proud of course, but we needed to keep moving. So let me end with this. So what happened one day was that this wonderful guy, who's a guy in our IT department, he got one of these, I think actually it came from Google originally, this idea that let's give our best people days off to pursue whatever ideas they could find. We've always done that in our sort of on the tech side of our business. And Stein, as he's called, originally from Iceland, he had realized that his friends that were journalists within the organizations, they hated transcribing interview tapes. That is the worst part about being a journalist, and it does not work. Darius, you can have it done in German. Timothy, you can have it done in English. It did not work in Danish and most other sort of smaller languages. But Stein realized that just a year and a half ago that there was some AI coming out that actually could do other languages seemingly or supposedly in better ways. So it started working. He built it for some of the journalists that were like, shit, this is a game changer in our everyday work. This is wonderful. So we released it to all journalists in Denmark, just like open source. Try this. And then we released it to all journalists in the world because it does speak all languages. The AI engine at the core of it is open source. Iranian, like almost any language you can mention, it can handle. And journalists and people in those countries never had access to transcription services that worked. So we built a sort of a pop-up operation, and to see if this could work, if we had a business, if it could become a business as well. And now we have more than 10,000 paying customers around the world. We grow 15 to 20% every single month. And so we're very, at least in sort of Scandinavian media, launching a successful tech startup within a journalistic company is not typical. And it's something I think we're pretty proud of. And now, unfortunately, there's so many over at the Good Tape team that they have to move out of the offices. But I'm sure we'll see them all the time. And fun thing, like in Taiwan, they had to stop using the Chinese services because of course, the security situation and the Chinese surveillance state. And we kind of blew up in Taiwan. So Taiwan is our biggest market, and but we're in all of them. So finally, to wrap up, in the phase we're in, I talk with Darius that it's always interesting to hear about the difficulties as well, because we can all startup people can tell this wonderful story. I'm worried about what I call legacy creep, which is that it's easy for our products to sort of edge itself towards more traditional formats, more newsy tone of voice. We forget to interact with members and ask for their help with stories. It's so easy. We have to just fight for those core values all the time as new people come in and as the organization grows. And it's such a threat because in journalism, there's a very, very strong sort of traditional culture, even of what is a good story, how does it sound, how do we organize our work, what's the role of the audience. So I think that is something that now that we're not a startup anymore, it has become very difficult and important from a management perspective or leadership, which is connected to like just the culture of innovation within the space. Like we have so many ways of doing things now. Obviously, it takes a lot of thinking. I think we're pretty good with that because the editor-in-chief is the most energetic person I know, and she always wants to blow everything up and reinvent it. That helps. And finally, there's a more principal thing, which is that we want to grow, and I think we could be approaching. It's at least there's a danger of what you call the mass market trap. You want to grow, so you start sort of pouring water in sort of the wine that made you special to begin with. Back to distinctiveness, which Timothy mentioned. I think there is a risk once you try to grow that you actually lose your distinctiveness. So that's maybe something we should be testing often. I think, again, founders don't necessarily agree. I think you would get a different story from a few other people, both the CEO, current CEO, and the editor-in-chief possibly. But it's something that I think about a lot, and it's some sort of dilemma. And finally, this is an article from last week in the major newspaper of Finland called Helsingin Sanomat. And as you can say, it has sort of the word has been spread that some company from Denmark called Zetland is looking to open in Finland, and that's the work that I'm doing full time really soon. So just to say that's one of the big things that's next for us. This means that I can get to help a new organization do all the things that we did wrong in the beginning to do them right this time. I'm pretty excited about that. Also getting to learn a new market is incredibly interesting, and to find some wonderful people that want to make a change in the world. But please, if any of you know anything about Finland or the Finnish market, or know people that I should talk to, please reach out. And if everything goes well, we'll be in the Finnish Innovation Index in a few years. We hope to launch this winter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jakob. That was really interesting to hear about innovation from a completely different perspective, or maybe not perspective, but a different industry. But it also fits into, I think, Tim's talk about how important it is to really understand the customers. And I think you are a good example of really working close with your customers and keeping their needs in mind when you're developing. And of course, we have contacts in Finland. So, all right, I think I will hand over to Helle now, who will introduce who will manage the annual awards.
Yes. Are there any questions, Darius, that we should take right now before I continue?
I think we will continue with the questions in my segment. I mean, that's a panel discussion, and so.
All right. I saw Tim getting up. Is there anything you'd like to say to Jakob? I know he referred back to your talk.
I was really impressed with what you've done. I wish we had it here, because I would definitely pay for this. And I loved the way you thought about, I have a need, that need helps me, can it help someone else? And build a business from that. It was just a brilliant way to say, I've become an expert because I had this need. That need isn't unique to me, right? And how can that work? And I love the fact that you talked about Taiwan. I mean, I never would have thought about that. But there have to be a whole bunch of places where if they find that capability would be really wonderful for them, right? Because the one thing we don't want is government intrusion on our conversations. And this is a great way for you to be that intermediary. Anyway, brilliant business strategies. And I'm sorry, I don't want to say this badly, but I don't tend to think of journalism as the most innovative space right now. And so watching you, I was like, wow. I was like, I had to turn my mic off because I kept saying wow all the time.
Yeah, it's easy. It's pretty easy to be It's easier to be number one in journalism innovation than in some other businesses, definitely.
Anyway, impressive, very impressive.
Thank you so much.
All right. I hope you can see my screen now. Lena, can you give me a thumbs up? Yes.
Yeah,
good.
We see it, but not in full screen.
I'll put it on presentation mode. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So thank you very much I'd like to say also thank you very much to our academic and our industry speakers. It's a pleasure to hear why looking at customer perceptions of innovation are important, and how you can actually work with engaging with the customer and being close to the customer, and what that can mean to developing in a new business. And now to the awards. And just to sum up a little bit, Lena talked about it earlier on. So we have this Danish Innovation Index where we look at the perceived innovativeness by customers of all these different companies. We have 80 companies this year and 20 industries. And apart from that, we also measure the innovativeness within the kind of social arena, and also digital. And with social, we mean innovative offerings that benefit society and environment. And digital, we mean companies, how innovative are they in using advanced digital products? And I'll start by showing you the top 20, sorry, not 20, but we don't have room for that, but the top 10 of the companies. You can see we have Lego. The second year we have Lego, and it's still a really high performer in our index. And then we have a number of other companies which I would say kind of look at how can we be with you in your spare time, right? So toys and games and consumer electronics are perceived very innovative by our customers in our panel. And then kind of the next bunch is where Zetland also comes in. So this is new ways of doing business in established industries, in fairly traditional industries, right? We have insurance, media, industries, and also you could say mobility. Also some industries that are quite established and quite traditional, and the ones that perform really good in our top 10 on the General Innovation Index. So how innovative are companies in general? That's really companies that do something new in these established business. Of course, we still also have fashion and more toys and games. And then there's also another trend that we can see, and we also have naturally in our panel with foods. And here I think the trend is really the non-animal food trend, so the vegetarian or vegan. So they are tapping also into that, not digitalizing like the others are, doing everything online, going audio as Zetland, and having apps. But here within the food industry, it's a different type of innovation. And I'll stick with these two kind of differences because it's quite clear when we go to the next kind of next award, which is within digital innovativeness. And here we can again see the consumer electronics, but also we have Undo, we have Spotify, which is also one of our kind of Nordic companies, Zetland and Luna Bank, who's also in our panel and was quite high last year also. And so these are all companies that have gone digital in, you could say, in established organizations or established industries where digital is not necessarily the big thing. So also a little bit further down, we see Airbnb, Booking.com. This is also a new way of doing business in the hotel industry. So this is a way of saying, so how can you actually get to being perceived as innovative? And of course, if you're in a digital, or if you've turned an industry digital, this is one of the ways. And then the next one is the social innovativeness index, where we really look at, so how do these companies, or look at companies that benefit society and the environment with their innovations? Again, we have naturally as a high riser, and also even here, Zetland and GoMore come in, because they do not only think about kind of going digital, but there's also another version. So this thing about how do we want to consume media? We actually also don't want just breaking news and all the negative news, but we also want something more in depth and a lot of the positive. And a thing about what we'll do for next year, we're trying to dig a little bit deeper in the social innovativeness, and from now on we'll try to differentiate between society and environment, because we think that different things are going on within that. So there will be a more socially focused innovativeness and a more environment. So we will be more sustainability related. So this was the social innovativeness. And one other thing that we'd like to show you is really the industry winners. So of course, industries are very different, and there's a huge variation, as you can see, within or between the industries, not within, but between the industries. So what makes you innovative in one industry does not necessarily make you innovative high on innovativeness in another one. But I think it's also a question of, as Sim was saying, so what does it take to actually get some more value? Well, it takes a 5-point increase. So you can do that when no matter which industry you're in, and no matter what level you are with the innovativeness. And of course, then you also, as a company, have to think about, so do we want to be the most innovative in the world? The Danish market, of course, we do have some global brands, but we also have some local brands. Is it the Danish market that's important, or is it really our industry that we should be focusing on and advancing there? So what can we do as a comparison to the other companies in our industry? And the last thing I'd like to say is really talk a little bit about, so what's the overlap between these innovativeness measures? And I was very happy, Jakob, when we made this figure, because that you had agreed to be a speaker, because Zetland is actually the only a top 10 that, or the only company that's in the top 10 of both the kind of general innovativeness measure and the digital innovativeness and the social innovativeness measure. So I think that's really well done. I'm very impressed that that you can make it into all three top 10s. So well done. And of course, we can see that there is quite some overlap between the kind of the general innovation measure and the social innovation measure, the general and the digital. There are quite some companies that overlap, but we see no overlapping between only the social and the digital. So I think that's also why it's quite impressive that that Zetland kind of gets in all of them, because it's not necessarily so easy to be perceived both high on the digital stuff and also doing good for society and the environment as a whole. But this was quite a quick walkthrough. I hope this is okay, and you will also get all the slides will be available from the website, so that you can look deeper into the numbers, and they are also all in our report, which is also available on the website. So I think I will just stop sharing and then leave the floor to the panel discussion. You ready for that, Darius?
Yes. And welcome everyone to the panel discussion. And to be frank, this is my favorite segment, because at Danish Innovation Index, we not only have the purpose of being excellent academically in assessing innovativeness of companies within Denmark, but we also have the responsibility of educating on how becoming innovative as companies. And so in organizing this segment, this is my favorite part, because I'm reaching out to the people who are steering the companies that are winning in this index. And that is why I'm very delighted that today I have 4 excellent panelist speakers with me, who I have to congratulate for winning in their respective industries. So of course that makes them very comfortable in sharing their stories, and we heard one story already because Jakob Moll is joining me as a panelist as well. And then also we have, as a panelist here, we have Anne-Marie Kindberg, who is a Chief Revenue Officer at Luna Bank. Luna is leading in the banking industry. Anne-Marie has joined us last year. That's why I'm delighted to welcome her back for a second year in a row. She's also a board member at Altinget, board member at Norlys Energy, and has more than 15 years of experience in executive roles in operations, marketing, and strategy at companies including Microsoft, Nets Group, Nordea, and TDC. And I'm very delighted that she also has received a bachelor degree from Aarhus University. So she's an alumni. Welcome, Anne-Marie. Next, we have Henrik Lund, and he is sitting in a cab and is joining us from London. And I'm very delighted. He's a CEO of Naturli Foods. He's also a self-proclaimed Chief Karma Officer with around 15,000 followers on LinkedIn. He's chairman of the Danish Plant-Based Food Association, board member of GUDP, a green transition program, and he has more than 25 years of experience in sales and managing positions, with the longest being at Dow's Back, the parent company of Naturli Foods. Welcome, Henrik, and welcome also to you for a second year in a row. And let me introduce the other speakers before we get to the questions. And I'm delighted that you made it today. So we have Jakob, the co-founder and international director of Zetland, former CEO of Zetland for more than 8 years, actually. He's also external lecturer at Syddansk Universitet and has more than 10 years of experience in the media industry and recently completed a fellowship at Harvard University. Congratulations. Also, congratulations for winning in the index all over the scales. Last, we have Anders Sahl Hansen, Head of Innovation from Aura Energy. He's a serial entrepreneur and has more than 16 years of experience in the industry. And I'm very delighted that he also has a master's degree in innovation management from Aarhus University. So our students make it far. This is the message. Now, setting the stage for this panel discussion, Danish Innovation Index has added more than 45 companies over the past year. So the competition grew. This means the competition is intense in the index. Importantly, we also have added measures related to digital and social innovation. I wanted to speak with Anne-Marie first. Luna stands out as an exceptional company, drawing in thousands of new customers annually and outperforming all other banks in our innovativeness ranking. Anne, I will put on your video and also pin you here. Welcome back. Congratulations to Luna and this exceptional performance. What has Luna done over the past year to maintain its competitive edge in terms of innovation compared to other banks in the industry?
Yeah, hi Darius and everyone else. Wonderful to be back. So always a pleasure. I think innovation can be defined as so many things. So I've just brought maybe 3 different examples, not only consumer related, but it's just examples of how different innovation can be. So for example, for consumers, I know that we've also returned to discussing AI. We recently launched, an AI service out to our consumers. It has been launched in beta, and now we're actually removing beta. So it means overall that all customers will, as we roll it out, get access to what we call an AI concierge. So having their own, we cannot call it advisor, that is for legal reasons, but let us call it inspiration. So like personalized inspiration, AI-based, on their economy or on economic questions. So I think that's an interesting example of innovation. And I know we'll come back to that. But again, innovation can be so many things. We also work with innovation, for example, even within something that may be as boring as pricing. So when everyone else in the banking market have quite complex pricing books, long books with different kind of fees in it, we try to just have one sheet with all of our price elements. So keep it super simple. We do that both across consumer and business. So just creating transparency in itself can for us also be innovation, because that also makes us stand out. And we have done that particularly around interest rates the last year, both for consumer and business. And then the last example, it is away from the consumer side now, but we have opened up to B2B companies selling our own infrastructure. And I know that sounds horribly unsexy, but when you're the only bank in the Nordics who can do like APIs, API-based selling of your infrastructure, it is innovation in itself. So it's just to say we define innovation, it can be tech innovation, it can be pricing or transparency innovation. It can be, on the product solution things like an AI service. So it's just to say we try to keep the innovative pace across all of these different elements.
Yes, and I can remember that you're always moving one step ahead of the industry. So, for example, when there was negative interest rates on higher saving in the accounts, Luna did exactly the opposite and actually gave positive interest rates, and now even extended this offering, at least I think, to premium members. Like for unlimited amounts. So that's quite interesting. And now that consumers are increasingly aware of their finances and spending habits and about where and how they allocate their resources, this shift in mindset has led to a growing demand for transparency, value, and sustainability across various industries. And I think you can probably speak to how Luna and maybe banks can contribute to the society through this innovation and social innovation.
Yeah, and I can maybe start with Luna, but it is an obligation for the whole industry, right? I think for us, and that is, if we define ourselves as a tech company, first and foremost, which also means that we put enormous obligations on ourselves to create amazing UX, amazing UI, and just experiences that are easy to understand. And with that, automatically, you actually also, just contribute to social equalness, just overall in the society. So half of all Danes don't know what compound interest rate is. So they don't know, what you can expect, of, for example, I'm investing this or I'm saving this. So what does any kind of compound interest rate gives me? It's just an example, but it's also just to explain that we talk about financial literacy and financial illiteracy. And the more easy you make these financial services, it's easy to overview your economy, it's easy to invest money. It's easy to, for example, through an AI concierge, to actually understand if I invest, if I save up 1,000 kroner each month, then in 3 years or in 5 years, how much money will I have? The easier you make this, the more you're actually also taking a social responsibility, because overall financial literacy is high, trust to banks is not high, and that is a non-healthy combination overall for what you could call financial health for consumers.
So would you say, because you already talked about artificial intelligence, and I was interested in that, now that artificial intelligence is taking the world by storm, companies are in a race to develop the right amount of AI that ultimately enhances the products and value for customers. And now you already teased it a little, but do you think the time is right for this AI-supported banking solution? And where will this take us over this year?
Yeah, I think the time is right because the technology is right, or the technology is there now, right? It hasn't been there truly in the previous years, but now it is. So I think we have better technological possibilities than we ever had before. But I also don't think that I don't think honestly it will be this year. Maybe we will be blown away yet. I think there are some good. I can mention other cases as well where I think they have done tremendously. But in a few years' time, it will have evolved already tremendously, right? So just nerding just a bit. But for example, right now there can still be you can still be in doubt about if you ask the same kind of questions 100 times, maybe 1 or 2 times, AI will still hallucinate today. But at some point of time, not very far out in the future, you will have AI controlling the AI. So also giving probabilities, for example, on how accurate is this answer. And when you build that in that kind of accuracy, I think in just a few years it will be mind blowing what we can do with AI. Also, when it comes to almost personal advisory. But I think yesterday, I think it was all over, at least in the fintech world, it was all over the news that Klarna had launched an AI bot in customer service, where they said that they could now deflect 70% of all customer requests just with this new AI service. And that is, I think, that would be the norm also within this year when it comes to like basic customer service requests, right? That you can do that with AI. They also saw a 25% decrease in customers returning, again, just for asking the same kind of questions, which all just means that the AI is even more precise, right? So I think this year will be is of course my own hypothesis, right? But will be the year where we see it in more basic service questions. And then within, I don't know, 1 to 2 years, you will see it also in the super personalized version where it's also advice and inspiration you can truly trust because you have the accuracy in. So I think, amazing and interesting years ahead of us.
Amazing and interesting indeed. And companies, of course, look to reduce the cost of human resources by automating these many elements in customer relationship management. So I will get back to a question about the human resource element later on. But for now, thank you, Anne-Marie. And let's move to Henrik before he is arriving at his destination and maybe has to leave us for his next business meeting. Naturally is in the top 5 overall most innovative companies in Denmark. And you sacrificed a few spots, but we also included 45 more companies in the index. And I remember from last year that your score this year actually increased by 2 index points. And if we trust the numbers that Timothy presented earlier to us, this must have led to a staggering financial performance. But that is not my question. My question is, how do you perform so well, and what's your secret ingredient?
Thank you very much, Darius. Yeah, I think the secret of Naturali's success is actually also a lot as I could hear that Zetland is doing. They are, interacting with their consumers, their readers, and in Naturally we do the same thing. So you could say we are an innovative company, but we do it through consumer-driven innovation, and that is because we are a cultural movement. We have 740,000 people in our community, and they are very, very eager to help us developing, innovating the next new first moving product from Naturally. And that is a great help. They give us great insights. We get more than 20,000 comments each month. We don't have ChatGPT, AI functions to answer them. We answer all comments ourselves, and we take all the insights into our innovation lab. So we constantly know what consumers are looking for. And if consumers are looking for a product, we know that our customers would be interested in learning more about that. So I think it's all about have a very high-level contact with your consumers. That is the key to success. And then I also think with that, Naturally cross-category brand in the plant-based food and drink space. Like focus a lot, and we focus on taste, good taste, functionality, and price. Price is very, very important in Denmark because Danish consumers, they're very, very conscious about the price on the products that they buy in the supermarkets. So we will never get anywhere if choosing plant-based should be the double up in price coming from conventional food. So if we want to do in Naturally, we want to be a positive change for all consumers out there. If we want to embrace them, we need price-wise also to be on the same level as our dear colleagues in the animal-based industry. So I think that is our claim to fame. Also that we, of course, communicate in a way that a lot of consumers out there like. Eye-level communication with a glimpse in the eye. We are not shouting at our competitors in the animal business. We focus on our own play field, so to say. So we have our noses in the track of the plant-based food space, and what the animal industry is doing is not something that we focus a lot on. We just want to be number one in plant-based food, and I think we must have done something right because in Denmark we are market leader in all the categories where we are represented with our Naturally brand. So that is very, very nice.
But you're also a good example. Thank you, first of all. But you're also Naturally is a great example of exporting the innovation outside of the Nordic markets. So that's why you're traveling, I understand. But I know also from media and experience that Naturally also made it to the German supermarkets. You're very successful in this regard. So could you share more about that and your?
Yeah. First of all, the reason why we are in London is because we are plant-based food partners with a Premier League football club, Brentford Football Club, and tomorrow they are playing against Chelsea at the G-Tech Community Stadium, and we are there to meet partners and fans And the reason why we teamed up with the Premier League club, or they actually came to us, is because the UK is a good market for Naturally, especially our plant-based spreads that we sell. They're known in Denmark as Naturally smørbar, and it's very good product in the UK as well as it is in Germany. Consumers really like it. The supermarket chains, they like it because the rotation is on the same level as conventional butter products, and that is also the key to success. So naturally, we are not a niche company. We focus on volume, the big categories, the big segments, but it's all about taste. And if you in naturally, we want to be first movers. We are not. We let our competitors be copycats, and that is totally okay with us. But if you can have a first mover approach, you will also have some uniqueness. So we were the first company that developed a plant-based butter alternative that, in a sense, that people, the perception of the product is more near to butter than it is to like a normal margarine. So it's all about the product. It has the same melting points as butter. It's palm oil free. We use almonds in the product that brings you kind of into butterland, and that has just been a very popular product in the export markets. We are now exporting to more than 30 countries around the world, from New Zealand to the UK to Germany, where we are in almost 3,000 Lidl stores placed next to Market Butter, and that is the other success story, that we have been able to convince with the product quality, the pricing. We have been able to convince our supermarket customers that they should place our products not in a niche shelf in the dark corner of their stores, but in the mainstream categories. And when you are there, you're just a new alternative to all consumers out there that we know from analysis that they are interested in plant-based products if they taste good and the price is okay.
If they taste good and the price is okay, and the side-by-side placement, for example, by Lidl, will certainly help. Thank you, Henrik. I'm a little bit pressed by time, but I will also get back to you when you have the time. It seems your ride is not over, so I'm glad you're still with us and the connection is so stable. That is innovation by itself. Next up, Jakob, we heard a lot about how Zetland has innovated, but even you were not aware that you would be, or Zetland would be winning in all our 3 innovativeness measures. So that is a surprise to you. And we also kept this as a surprise for your surprise reaction. And so, yes, Zetland is guided by the citizens who choose to contribute to its mission. You exist to give meaning to our lives and improve the public conversation through a business model that is funded, supported, and driven forward by its members. Importantly, Zetland, once you subscribe, is ad-free and fully transparent. And now my daring question is this enough? Is it enough to be innovative in today's rapidly evolving digital landscape? You mentioned a little bit like the media titans like TikTok and so on. They are changing the game of media and putting Zetland potentially under pressure, or is this a completely different realm?
Yeah. I'll keep it kind of brief so I can pass the microphone to Anders from Moll, who I'm curious to hear from in a little while. But to answer your question, it's absolutely not enough. What you described was sort of our core mission, our reason for existing. We have a principle we follow, which is that people come for the mission and stay for the product, and I think that's probably true for something like Naturally as well, in a sense. At the end of the day, we need, and the price needs to be right, especially if we're going to reach new audiences. So we are constantly trying to reinvent our product, including our not just building sort of layers on it, but really even thinking about if we're doing the right product. Our audience gets a little bit older every year. We also sort of, when we launched, we really sort of grabbed onto the very young audience, but it's something that we follow closely, because we don't want sort of the same thing to happen for us, that like we miss a generation because we don't understand how they think about and like what channels they're on, how to reach them, how to make ourselves relevant. So we feel like the fire burning under our feet, what you're describing, the pressure to innovate. Luckily, I was just thinking about why we seem to not fall into the most obvious traps of having some success and then just sticking, to what you've succeeded with. We have very strong support from our board and owners, and like they want us to invest everything we can and to be as ambitious as we can, both in terms of growth, but also sort of beginning with innovation. And then, as I mentioned, Leah, our editor-in-chief and my co-founder, is also the chief innovation officer. Like, her most important role, I think, in the organization is essentially that she gets up every day and whips everybody to come up with something insane to do that's new. And it's so important culturally to have that from the very, very top, that person that's like a culture bearer that wants to ask those questions every single day about everything we do. So what we end up doing is sort of trying to, one of the innovations we're trying to do organizationally is to move towards, as many other companies, towards a more distributed organization, meaning that we can sort of innovate in different tracks simultaneously. And so for us, I think the most interesting question right now is to make sure that we add systems, so it doesn't sort of devolve into some sort of chaos because of what's going on, that we add systems, but without introducing sort of red tape and forms and budget, negotiations and all these things. And I think it's a very, very interesting time to be in, because we do need more systems. We need to be, I know one of my teachers at HBS, the Harvard Business School, said that like when you're in a startup, you learn how to do things fast. That's the only way to succeed. And then you get to a point where you sort of have to think about every project and think about, do we want to do this fast like we used to do, or we want to do this right? Because we're sort of working with more resources and the bigger organizations and a lot of customers potentially. So that's where we are now. And so luckily it's not about sort of keeping the pressure on. It's about like, how do we get a more mature understanding of how to handle big projects over time? So we don't always sort of reinvent everything, but it's an interesting place to be.
Very interesting indeed. And I have so many more questions, but little time. So let's move to our last panelist, Anders. You are congratulations first of all, winning the industry, which is, I think, my hypothesis is the toughest industry to be innovative in. And so I'm even more interested in how you did this, how you surpassed competitors. We know that electricity suppliers in Denmark, as well as all over Europe, play a crucial role in shaping the daily lives of consumers. And this significance is especially pronounced given the current context of significant increases in energy prices, but also the demand of energy, clean energy, and so on. So you're in the right spot, but also in a tough spot. And I would like to hear more from you.
Yeah, thank you. And we're proud to be winners of the category. And I feel a bit like Jakob, that it's a conservative category. So maybe that's also one of the reasons why we managed to come out on top. And I guess also it does help that I guess we're kind of the underdog in the category. Maybe that also helps us in a way. And I think in general, I'm very impatient as head of innovation, but I'm surrounded by patient people, and that helps me a lot. in this industry, because often innovation is related to long-term investment. That's also a big part of it. I think we don't have a lot of hierarchy at the company, and I think that's also why it's I guess attractive to partner up with us, have us as investment partners, or that we bring in small, medium-sized companies as suppliers. So I guess a lot of the perception of innovativeness also goes back to all the people that we work with in the ecosystem. And I guess we're also, at least I'm pushing our head of communication to always talk about the process, not just the results. So as Jakob mentioned, going into the field, taking pictures of us talking to customers, I think that's also perhaps part of why we're perceived as being innovative. I can say not all stuff that we do end up on the shelves, the digital shelves, but I think that's extremely important, at least for me, to not just talk about what happened in terms of products and services. And then we're based in Aarhus, which is, I guess, recently elected as the happiest city in the world. So that might also be part of the reason why we won.
Yes, and one of the innovations that has not ended up in the shelf, but actually on the streets, is that Aura has expanded into new services. How does that play into the strategy and the innovation strategy of an electricity supplier, and where do you see your business actually?
Well, I think at least in terms of the EV sharing company or the service that we started, perfectly sort of tells a story of who we are as a company, because we both need to be a financially stable company that makes money from almost all our activities, but we also need to do services that are you could say positive for our owners, which is we're a cooperative owned company, as most of our competitors. So everything we do is measured on, does it make sense financially to do it, but also is it something that is a new service to our customers and owners. So everything we do in innovation is being evaluated on those two parameters, and I really like that I don't have to just solely focus on one or two, but try to figure out if we can find the sort of the perfect spot in the middle. But we'll definitely diversify products and services in the coming years, because almost all of our business domain has moved from almost monopolies or clear monopolies to red ocean. So I think for the last 5 years that I spent at the company, we moved from being almost invisible to being almost in the headlines every other week. And I guess it also helps us in terms of our competitors that we don't pay multi-million bonuses. We had a good year financially, and we get a chocolate Easter egg at the company. So I think that might also help the evaluations from the customers.
Yes, and that you make it to the headlines and make it to the top in our ranking, that is for sure. Now I'm curious, because the demand for clean energy is skyrocketing, and there's a notable shift towards electric powered solutions, even heating across Europe, and a surge in demand for electric vehicles. Now, this poses a big challenge for the infrastructure, but also for companies that are supplying on these infrastructures. So how do you see innovation tackling this in the coming years, and where will Aura compete in 5 years from now?
I guess the biggest shift for us will be going from selling energy that we do today. We produce energy, we sell energy, to actually sell energy savings. So in a way, we will be, I'll be working to more or less make our electricity retail shop sell less electricity to the consumers. And that's why people will choose us over our competitors. And I guess that might also be the shift that we'll be doing in our fiber internet company, going from selling just megabytes to maybe more responsible internet behavior. So I think that's going to be at least two of the biggest shifts that we have coming up for us. And I also see that we're a medium-sized company, but I think we'll be working to enabling more local ownerships, local networks, energy networks, even though that might disrupt our own business model. But I guess that's part of working with innovation, that you can't sort of be too proud of where you are today. So I think in 5 years' time, that might be part of our business model, enabling competition to our own business units.
Very fascinating, and very fascinating how these success metrics and value propositions are actually changing going forward. And I mean, this will evolve, and I hope Danish Innovation Index will evolve together with it. Now it's also time to open up the floor to questions from the audience. Please navigate to the chat or the Q&A panel in the Zoom interface and submit your questions, specifying also who they're directed to. Even if you don't have any questions, we encourage you to visit the Q&A panel to vote on the ones you find most interesting. To kickstart the discussion, I'll pose a question that may be relevant for the young professionals in the audience. And now I'm getting back to the human resource element. So what are the key skills and competencies that you seek in individuals working for your companies to drive innovation within their respective industries? And the second question would be, are there any opportunities for internships or positions to contribute to these efforts? And I just give this out to all of you. So yeah.
At least I would like to maybe just make a comment. I think sometimes I'm also giving just guest lectures at the Copenhagen University, also to young students, right? And I often ask them, if you want to be a super innovative company, and challenge everyone else, what are then the most important departments in your company? And like, who will truly make the difference? And quite often people mention it could be product, it could be R&D, and giving those type of answers. But I think one thing I've at least learned from working now in Luna in a few years is that I think we can only challenge the full industry because everyone that is hired come in with the DNA and the wish to challenge an established industry. So that is the red thread that is binding people together, right? So for example, for us, if you want to challenge how you onboard customers in a highly regulated industry, it's not good enough that it's only, the product department that wants to challenge. It also needs to be everyone working in compliance and legal. So everyone needs to share that same kind of mission of wanting to challenge. So I think for me, it's much more cultural fit or a mission fit that is needed than it is specific competencies, just as the foundation for at least being able to innovate. So I think that would be my perspective.
Is that a perspective shared by our other panelists, or can you pinpoint at least a few skills and competencies that are needed to succeed, maybe when you have the passion that Anne just mentioned?
Maybe I can just give a few insights on that. We see a lot of people contacting us just for the sole reason that we are a player in the green transition. And they ask us, do you have any open jobs that might fit our profile? And I think that's a great place to start, that you have like a mission, and then maybe spend a year or two at the company and then understand the domain. You don't need, I didn't have a lot of domain knowledge. That didn't, you could say, weigh me down as a head of innovation when starting at the company. So rather having that drive to change something, as Anne-Marie mentioned, is much more interesting for us than having like 10, 15 years of experience, because with the changes that we're looking into, that might be relevant in the short term anyways.
Henrik, you have arrived at the destination. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it is really good. It's nice. About the passion and what drives you, I think with dedication and motivation, you come a long way. And also to hanging there when you have the ideas for new innovation, even though some might say that this is a bad idea, believe in it. And I think it takes a lot during the process. Actually, naturally, I think our competitive edge is also speed to market. So from when we get an idea and until we develop it, it's a very short stage. So that is also something that have been beneficial in our journey, and you will see that in 2024, because this year we are going into new categories all over the supermarkets in Denmark with a lot of innovation. So we have ramped up a lot of new products to really push the barriers now also in the light of the green transition and everything going on in Denmark around this subject and the dietarian advices from government side.
We could go very much in depth. My question would be like, do we need more labels? Would that help your products?
We would. I think we in our plant-based food organization association, we were part of the task force to come with a suggestion for the Minister for Food and Agriculture to launch a climate claim on food products in Denmark. Like, when you buy a new chiller or freezer, it goes from green to red as a navigation tool and a help for consumers if they are interested in buying climate-friendly food when they're doing their daily shopping trip to the supermarket. And that work has been done, but as many times before, when it then ends up back in the ministry, it is going too slow. We should have this new climate label yesterday, if you ask me.
The time to market for regulatory aspects is probably not keeping pace with the innovation power.
Exactly.
Truly.
Darius,
Jakob,
can I suggest something? Because I think Tim is still hanging around, if I'm right, and I think it could be really interesting to have him reflect a little bit on the panel discussion, because I think seen from the American Innovation Index perspective, maybe he has some thoughts on. So are there different types of innovation that actually drive the innovativeness and the value for consumers more than others? I'm sorry, Tim, I'm totally cold calling you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful cold call. But it is the first thing I wanted to note is you guys are amazing. I've seen a lot of innovative companies. I'm freezing on you. I hope you can still hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Okay.
I got a Zoom quit unexpectedly note from me, so I'm sorry if you can't see me. But the reality is, the one thing that has to happen, and I'll give you an example from the U.S. Goodyear, a tire company. You may not, I don't know. They became extraordinarily innovative in changing out all. They went to a plant-based component in their tire. Turned out it actually made the tire better. Nobody cared until they told them why they should, right? once they told them, look, this actually helps the environment. It also helps you because you're not going to be able, it actually puts a better grip on the road. And the reality is you only have the size of your palm for 4 tires, keeping you alive. Instantly, that transformed how the customer perceived it. I think one of the most important pieces is that you manage the evidence. We talk about that in service all the time. But if you don't give them a sense of why they should care, they don't. And I'm thinking about Zetland, right? You told them why you exist. They came to you for the mission. They stay with you for the product. But you always make sure they understand the mission. You never let that quit. The same thing is happening with the is it Aura, the energy company. And I instantly thought about a company that's not in the U.S., but it's actually in the Madeira Islands, part of Portugal, right? EEM, I can't pronounce the Portuguese name of the electric utility, but they have to do the same thing. They talk about the hardest part is actually not bringing more engineers in, but bringing better people to communicate why they should care, right? Because if you don't get them to understand how this relates to them in a very human way, then you're going to lose. And so I always find it interesting that the winners in the US tend to also have very prominently display why you're winning from what we're doing. Why you're winning from what we're doing. But not from the company's perspective, but from the customer's perspective. And I hear that consistently from everyone here, whether it be, if it's a plant-based food, obviously somebody's already got in there, but they don't go, it's a plant-based food and it sucks, but hey, it's okay, right? It's a plant-based food that tastes amazing, right? You're not sacrificing quality to get what you want for the planet and for your own personal health, I'm assuming, right? And the banking one, I love the banking one. How are we going to make your financial life easier? You don't even know what compound interest is, if I recall correctly, right? Is that what you told me? Half the population doesn't even know what it is. You're helping to make them smarter, but you're telling them why this benefits them. If you don't do that, you're never going to have the innovation you want because they're going to just not notice it, right? It's why I tell my wife I love her 100 times a day, right? Because I don't want her to suddenly not understand that I have this passion for her. Just like you have your passion for your customers, or in your case at Zetland, they're not customers, they're members. Actually, they're guests, right? They're your guests. You treat them that way. Anyway, I'm sorry I've gone off so much. I keep talking too long. But you guys are amazing. I want you speaking at the American Innovation Conference because you guys are great. And you should be very, very, I'm sure you're already proud of what you do, but I'm sitting here just in awe. Thank you so much for the opportunity to listen to you.
Thanks, Tim.
What a wonderful summary of the key insights that we had in this panel discussion. And I extend the invitation because I would also love to see you back at the next Danish Innovation Index Award Conference. And for that, you will do the best and stay most innovative within your industries. And we do the best to measure it in the most scientific and academic and valid way. And with that, I'm closing this panel discussion and turn back to our host, Lina.
Thank you, Darius.
Thanks, everyone.
So, thank you for these great discussions, input. It's time to wrap up the event now. And I hope that everyone who was joining in today got some new inspiration, some relevant input to reflect further on. I think we can all agree that innovation is important, but that it's absolutely crucial how it is perceived by consumers in the end. We've been presented with scientific insights on this, and which has really emphasized quite relevant for companies' financial performance. And then we have heard how the successful companies work on being innovative in practice, both within media, banking, food product development, energy supplies. And I think it demonstrates that even though industries and companies are different, they all come together on that innovativeness is important. It's been truly inspirational to listen to all of you and see how you're working with this. So this will be the last words of this year's conference. Thanks to the audience, thanks to all our speakers, our panelists. If you have any questions, please reach out. Also, if you are interested in hearing more about this project. So thank you for your participation and have a great weekend.
Thank you.